Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Northern Consultations, the rookie class. I am your friendly neighborhood soda. As always, I am joined by Daniel. How are you doing, my man?
Hey, yeah, it seems we're stuck together because everyone else is busy. They get to do the show tomorrow with another rookie, but
Yeah,
we
but
got
yeah, I
we
was just saying,
got the we got the better one because we got the Canadian.
not
That's
not
right.
just not just that. I got a feeling we got a star in the making here. His name is Ross Arsenault from out in Halifax. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you guys having me on and appreciate the kind words as well.
Oh, no worries. A little bit behind the scenes stuff when you sent in, when you contacted us and we were watching these videos, we were all freaking out in the chat. We're like, "Holy shit, this guy's good."
Perfect. Well,
Yeah.
I intend to play even better than my promos. So
Well, okay, then everybody watch out. Uh, so first things first, how did you come across the movie Trivia Schmoedown?
it's been a little while, actually. I was a big fan of Harloff for Jedi Council and just kind of the built out from the community from there. And he always talked about schmoedown, and I'm obsessed with Star Wars. And so, of course, I watched some of those matches. The first one I watched was the five-way where Whitwer was absolutely what's your swearing policy?
We're allowed, we
It's
swear.
fine. Go
Okay,
ahead.
a goddamn monster. He was just fucking incredible. And so he was leading the entire time and then just had a couple slip ups at the end. And I was shocked. I could not believe how engaged and invested I was in the way I would be for a sport. I mean, I love Star Wars, but I'm also like, I'm a hockey fan, fellow Canadians. And so it was something that I was like, wow, this is incredible. This is a beautiful blend of some things that I love. I'm a very competitive guy, and I could play along and hold my own. And so I just got extremely invested from that point. And I've been playing along with the Star Wars League for a couple of years. And this last year, I got extremely invested. I watched all the matches, didn't miss any, just across all the divisions, just because I thought it was really impressive the way that they kind of shook up the league last year for the new era. I thought it made it really easy to follow, and I love the involvement of managers and the way that kind of changed things up. And so that's kind of been my journey to here. And I had such an urge to play along, not just at home. That when the auditions opened up, I had to put one in.
Okay, so two things. First off, you said hockey fan. What's your team?
Actually, I listened to the Thomas Harper interview on here, so you'll be pleased, Daniel. I have been since I was 8, since he won us our gold medal against the Americans. Sorry, Americans. I've been a massive Devils fan. Martin Brodeur was my favorite player growing up.
Respect.
So,
That 01 Olympic final, I still go back and watch it all the time.
Yeah, it was. It really made me fall in love with the game. Of course, I'm Canadian, but I know that makes me also a little bit blacklisted in Canada, having my favorite team be a U.S. team. But there was enough Canadians on the roster, and I love the defensive game that they played, and it's just made me fall in love with the sport. And I was also loved golf as well. But it was when trivia was turned into a sport and there was a Star Wars angle, that was too much of a perfect storm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I do gotta jump in with two things. One, at least you're not like a Red Wings fan or anything.
Like Dave.
Things could be worse.
Exactly.
I didn't want to call him out personally.
Hey, well, this is what that sucker put into the live chat. He said I smell, so I'm gonna gladly call him out on fucking camera.
Well, I grew up 5 minutes from where Sidney Crosby grew up and where Nathan McKinnon grew up, and I've passed by them many times.
Cole Harbour, right?
Dartmouth, which is right next to Cole Harbour. It's just a matter of like the high school over. So, and actually Nathan McKinnon went to my high school because it was a better schedule for playing for the junior team. So anyway, that's just a bit of an aside. But in terms of hockey love, I've always been around. I've always been around sports in that regard.
Amen. Total respect.
And the other thing I was gonna say is also a sports thing. Like, I never got into the sport of golf personally, but then I was watching like the sports channel one time, and it shows a golf tournament, and I saw the greatest thing that golf will ever produce, which was a guy hit the ball several hundred yards into a tree and then into a spectator's pocket. And I was sitting there just like flabbergasted. How do you even do that? And then the spectator like went to move and then remembered he was at a golf game and you cannot move the ball from where it landed.
Yeah.
So he just like
true.
freezes himself and he just stands there and he waits for an official and he's just like, it's in my pocket. What do we do here?
That'd be a weird one.
Does he hit it from there?
Well, did you guys see that ridiculous putt from, I think it was the Masters this year?
No.
The guy
Didn't
hit
catch it this year.
across the freaking green, and it does like this like loop to loop, and it goes right into the hole. I'm like, okay, I'll never be that good.
So to get into like movies and such for a little bit here,
For sure.
we are generally pro sports, but we try to keep it towards the movie side.
Yeah, let's keep it on topic. Sure.
Yeah, if we have to.
Curious. I mean, I do want to ask what your favorite Star Wars movie is, but I also want to ask who your Spider-Man is, because I do see a painting of him in the background there.
That's not Spider-Man. That's 3PO.
It's not Spider-Man?
You're referring to this right here?
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
That would be 3PO with binary sunset as his eyes.
It looks blue underneath to me. That's why. My bad.
No, the under part is just the Star Wars logo, and then Luke and R2 and 3PO and Owen just talking.
Dude, that is a great picture.
That
it's
is actually
poster.
super cool. Yeah, I do see all of those things now that you mention it. But
lots of Star Wars stuff behind me.
Okay,
I can angle it differently for different kind of work calls where it's like, probably shouldn't have so much Star Wars stuff behind me. Let's just go with the blank curtain.
So just the first question then. What Star Wars movie really drew you into the universe?
It's unfortunate. No, I shouldn't say it's unfortunate. It's such a common answer, but Empire has always been my favorite. I literally, and I joke about it with my brother, but every single day I can account for at least one time every single day in reenacting Luke upside down on Hoth in the Wampa Cave. There's always something that's just like either 5 inches out of reach or across the room, and you don't want to have to get up, and you just wish that you could just pull it right to you. And as a kid in Canada, whereas I painted the broomsticks in my yard, and so we would do lightsaber fights with the neighbors, and when it was snow on the ground, I mean, it felt like Hoth, and so it felt so easy to kind of put myself in those shoes, but it was also a fun action moment. I was a big fan of Yoda when I was a kid. Yoda is still my favorite character, but also probably because the character was so small. I was also a big fan of R2 when I was a kid. I think definitely for that reason as well. Han and Vader, of course. And so it's when it comes to those being my favorite characters then and still, it really is consistent. That's Empire. Those characters' real main showing. But beyond that, I love A New Hope. It's right up there on that same top tier. I love Return of the Jedi as well. I love The Mandalorian. I am in love with The Mandalorian. I love Force Awakens and I love Revenge of the Sith as well. I think that the other two movies of the sequels and prequels have a lot of phenomenal things in them and a lot of things that could maybe go back to the drawing board. I think that I probably like more things from the prequels as an overall because I love Clone Wars and I love Rebels so much, and that kind of enriches them a little bit more. And the sequel trilogy, I feel, had more opportunities to get things right where they didn't. But in that same kind of capacity, I feel like in 10 years' time, there'll be so much other supporting content, just like we're getting with The Mandalorian. Mandalorian's already starting to make those sequel trilogy make more sense. And I love that. And I love the mystery of Star Wars. And so if things don't make sense and don't really work for me now, then how can I piece them together in my mind? How can I think about, okay, well, how does this make sense? And it just leads to more fun speculation. And so from an overall perspective, I love all the Star Wars movies because they're part of Star Wars. And so I do engage with all of them. I don't just watch my favorites. So I know some people, like the ones they watch the most are their favorite. I watch the one that I just feel like watching. So I'd say Solo or the Clone Wars movie would be probably on the bottom of my list. But I elected to watch the Clone Wars movie last week just because. And so, I mean, probably could have helped me a little bit with trivia.
Thanks, Lou.
But
I was going to say, so what I've noticed now is now that we've had the sequel trilogy out, a lot of people are going back and their opinions are changing on the prequels. Like we used to have all that hate for it. Doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. Do you think we'll actually get to a time where people will look at the sequel trilogy in that same fashion, like in hindsight, it wasn't as bad as we thought?
It really depends, and it all depends on what you're talking about. Because in hindsight, I don't think you can make many good cases for Natalie Portman.
No.
I think you can make actually quite a few good cases for Hayden Christensen, especially if you watch the behind-the-scenes information, and if you think about the fact of envision the human inside of Darth Vader and don't make him scary. He's lame as hell. That's the whole reason why the prequels were made. George Lucas said people thought Darth Vader was cool. He was supposed to be pathetic. They missed the point, and so that's why I had to make the prequels. And so I think if you look at it that way, there's a lot more things that you can really go back and appreciate from that perspective. Some of the CGI doesn't age so well, but then it's a matter of the time.
That's my big downfall for the prequels for me personally. I think there's too much CGI.
Also,
and that's totally fair.
Like, other than like Empire and Jedi, I'm not the biggest fan of A New Hope, and
it's my favorite.
I love it.
Yeah,
it's my sick day movie.
Empire's
it would be like my fourth, because my third favorite is actually The Last Jedi, and there is one, like, I could fix that movie by just making General Hux the only person to follow them, so it makes a little more sense to do it at slow speed. But with a giant army, it was just a little confusing. And he's like so determined to make himself right that he totally, it would have been viable that he goes alone and just goes to hunt them down out of vengeance.
Whatever co-hosts, you have no soul.
The Last Jedi is a really interesting one because I think it's a lot more like the prequels than people want to admit in certain areas.
Really?
And I think it's similarly to also the way that people can look at the sequels differently in the future. The acting is fucking ridiculous in the sequel trilogy. It's so good. It's just phenomenal. Adam Driver is sensational. Daisy Ridley's sensational. Oh, yeah. John Boyega is sensational, even though they don't give him anything after The Force Awakens.
Oscar Isaac, great.
Oscar Isaac, even though he plays a war criminal in The Last Jedi, he's like J.J. Abrams writes him great, and so and he acts it incredibly well. But I find the last
Mark Hamill. Hamill, despite what
best
everybody
performance,
exactly, hands down his best performance, Luke Skywalker.
Absolutely, and I personally, when I view that movie, it has some of my favorite moments in Star Wars with Yoda and Luke's conversation. That involves my favorite quote in Star Wars: "We are what they grow beyond. That is the burden of all masters." I think that is the most one of the most revealing quotes ever.
I thought huge when he showed up on screen.
It just made me the biggest fist bump I could ever imagine. And I think that movie, Ken Knapsack says it best when he and Joseph Scrimshaw talk from Force Center. And I heard when he mentioned it, it just kind of blew my mind. It's Star Wars is always about growing up, but The Last Jedi is about growing old. And I think that if you view it that way, it's like you can't disagree with the Luke Skywalker arc. And he comes back in the end. It's not like if you watch the full movie, he's still the Luke Skywalker. He has a moment. And if you go through life and you're perfect your entire life, then you're not a human, in which case you've lost your ability to relate to Luke Skywalker, the hero that we all fell in love with because we related to him. And so that's kind of something that I always really appreciate.
And plus, he has a moment and then takes the advice that every one of his predecessors has, which is go live on his own in a random ass planet for a decade. And that's just what you do as a Jedi Master, apparently.
No, and then you have like Luke Skywalker is basically like everything those characters knew about Luke Skywalker was all myth and legend, and nobody could confirm what it was. And at the very end, he gave them the legend that everybody wanted, even though it wasn't him.
Yeah, he gave them hope, and the way that they gave everybody the best of both worlds in Mandalorian was also a really great thing, and I did certainly appreciate that. But I guess comparing The Last Jedi with the prequels, I was more so along the lines of everything on Canto Bight is deeply terrible. It's bad acting from Kelly Marie Tran and unfortunately John Boyega, and for some reason Benicio del Toro is acting terribly on that sequence, and it's also too long.
Weird
and
choice on his part.
And BB-8 is weird. So it's just, for some reason, it just, everything in that arc doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. And if you change it, the movie, I think, lands a lot better with more people. And I think that's where the most of my criticisms come from, and where I can see a lot of the kind of prequel notions. But then the other parts I love. But The Last Jedi is forever going to be one of the biggest discussions and talking points for Star Wars.
I was gonna say that is the one thing I find that everybody on either side of that movie can agree on, is that Canto Bight is the worst part of the movie.
Well, that's the thing. I like when people can agree on that, because then it's a matter of, like, people hate the Luke Skywalker part so much. I mean, that sucks for them, not in a matter of, oh, sucks for you. It's a matter of just like, that sucks. You wish people could enjoy that more. And it's also a really hard one to just convince somebody of. It's not something that you're going to be able to, like, kind of talk back and forth and eventually they're going to maybe come to. It's something that they probably have to come to on their own, or they'll never come to, and they don't like it. And so that does make it one thing that is a little bit difficult for people. And I had maybe some of those feelings with Rise of Skywalker, in the sense that I felt it just did too many things similar to Return of the Jedi, just not as well. Yeah. And then an overall plot that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but had a lot of the pieces there that were really, really good. It had all the pieces of the puzzle. It hammered a few in the wrong spot and made an odd picture. And so when I look at it now, I'm sure the pieces will fit better into place, and that kind of odd mashed together puzzle will just be one odd looking tile in a much bigger mosaic of the Star Wars era. And so when we have Rogue Squadron, we have The Mandalorian, all these things are going to piece together to make those sequels make more sense. And I have to be patient. I have to take the advice from Yoda and be patient.
Yeah, you are reminding me of how I talk about, like, the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones as, like, a huge fan of that world, the books and the show, and just, like, the way you summarized all of the pieces just hammered into the wrong place is just like, I understand that fully. It's like, I love each of these bits in a vacuum, but you put them in the wrong order. I understand that feeling.
Certainly, yeah.
Okay, so back to the schmoedown a little bit.
Sure.
When you auditioned, because I mean, you were just recently added. Did you audition at the beginning, or was that like a little bit of a later thing? It was like last minute.
So it was last minute. I knew that I kind of wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do for an audition, but I 100% knew I was going to put one in. And on Ben Bateman's stream, he does his Nerds and Suits goal setting, and I just kind of said, "Fuck it," one day, and I said, "I'm calling my shot." And I just kind of posted it in there specifically. Then I submitted my audition, and then that was that was just before the deadline. So I'd made up 100% my mind about a week before the deadline that it was going in, and then I used that week to find the time and make a promo that I thought could stand out enough, or at least be different enough that it would maybe get me to a position where I could certainly preach my case, and that I'll be a valuable addition to any team.
Oh yeah, the stuff you did, like I don't know if it's not public, is it?
It's not public, but it's not intentionally unpublic. It's an unlisted YouTube video, but it's public on the Facebook channel.
Yeah. So I was gonna say,
maybe I'll comment it on the video.
The stuff you did in that video, man, like holy shit! Like especially the very beginning with the whole in the cockpit, like that was mind blowing.
I appreciate that. I know Alex Damon loves his squadrons, so I figured I would send him a little hollow while he was inside of the cockpit of a Y-wing.
Yeah, no kidding. Has anybody reached out to you yet?
I've spoken with a couple managers peripherally, not a whole lot. And I've kind of I've reached out to a couple as well and haven't heard back. But I would certainly, the big thing for me is I'd love to just prove myself. When you look at Dungeon, they've got Parker. When you look at the Den, they've got Goddard. You look at the Exchange, they've got Barbarian. You look at the Stars, they've got Alex Damon. You look at Swag, they've got Chandru. And you look at Corruption, they have Mike and Chance. So look at all of those IG players / one Star Wars player on those teams. So those teams all have somebody who can prepare quizzes, whether it's 10 questions, 8 questions, 5 questions, 2 questions, 50 questions, 100 questions. Use the players in your team. I want to be able to prove myself. I'm happy to be able to get on a chat and chat about my personality. I certainly think that there's people on any of the teams I could mesh well with. I was a tutor for many years, so I'm eager to study with people as well, whether it's Star Wars or IG or other. Like my brother, who I do my podcast with, he's a Star Wars fan, but he's not a massive Star Wars fan the way that I am. He's a fan of all these other different categories, and I love to be able to just chat back and forth with him. He's my best friend, and so I know a lot more about movies than I probably should, and I do a lot better in singles and team matches than I probably should. And considering how much I like to study, and I was a pretty stellar student, I'd have no problem working with somebody who wants to polish different parts of their game. Even if it was like a Zerflirtenflaus or someone who needs, who's maybe a little bit all show and maybe not as much tell as the game wants. Although, let's face it, he's played pretty damn well. But I'd love to work with anybody as well, and I'd love to be able to learn from other people too, because my brother, he's been able to help me on the occasional time where he's gotten me with one. He's just like, "What's this?" And I won't know, and then it'll take me down a new rabbit hole where I can learn a bunch of new facts here and there.
So, like you're obviously a Star Wars player, and you just said you do better at singles and teams. Do you think is that something you possibly in the future would want to go down?
I'd probably not singles, because that just over time will continue to get better and better with people who bleed all movies. I think maybe at one point teams to be able to have a kind of a balance. I definitely think I could do well as a bit of a specialty player. I know that if you give me a range of something to look in, it doesn't matter really what it is. I can study it and know it. So maybe teams at one point, but Star Wars certainly for now.
Yeah. So our boss man, Lou, had this question in the chat that he wants to ask. And Lou, oh, never mind. You did spell it right. I thought there was an L instead of an I. I was like, Lou, come on. Is there a question that a Star Wars competitor missed and you knew right away? If so, tell.
A handful. I have to say it's spectacular. It was that speed round was a breeze. I think I cut off Harloff every single question.
Oh, wow.
I was shocked anybody got any of those ones wrong. I did know. Was it 8D8? So that would have been Dimalantas. I knew that one.
Did you know the parking ticket?
The parking ticket, I did know. I didn't pull it as fast as he did. I didn't pull it as fast as he did. I would have been able to. I think I would have been able to get it. So playing along, that one was a tough one to be able to say, like, oh, I 100% would have got it. I knew to study it because it's a bit of a factoid tidbit. It's a reference to a movie. I don't know what movie it is, but it's a reference to a movie that Rian Johnson's a fan of. And so it's a generalized factoid. And I wrote it down because I also watch the subtitles on everything because I'm a little bit hard of hearing, and just the subtitles I always saw. So when I saw it there, I put it down the same way Ace did. Ace got it pretty damn fast, but I do have that one in my bank. And pretty much if it's in my pool of questions, I'm going to know it. And so that's something that I can feel pretty confident on. When I played along with the Star Wars tournament, though, I didn't lose any of the matches except for the perfect game between Scrimshaw and Dimolanta. I also played perfect, but I actually lost on the same question as Scrimshaw. So I will say that I played good enough to either continue the game in any of the matches, beat any of the players if the match was finished and everybody, all the questions were out there. except for that one. It was the only one that it wouldn't have mattered in the end. The Demolanta's perfect +1 would have still got me. But other than that, I could have still done the same miracle run as Ace. And I know a lot of people say it's always about like whether you're under the pressure of the spotlights, and I get that, but I do have a lot of experience in front of big crowds and on a microphone and being questioned with a time limit and with a lot of stakes on the line. Yeah,
I was gonna say, like, if you watch your audition tape, you do display that very well by showing things you have done, like all your presentations and all that jazz. So I mean, yeah, it comes across very well.
Thank you.
And I do want to get into that in a second, but before this question came up, you were talking about like studying specific categories. If I gave you a specific category of 214 movies called the Inner Geekdom Division, what say you?
That depends. That's a big ass category.
It's a pretty big category, yes.
It depends. I would maybe consider it. Yeah. It's the sort of thing that I think I would have to be practicing a bit and see how well things were going. I like trivia a lot. I think, well, I don't think, I know for a bloody fact, it stems from when I was 7 and the teacher decided the best way for all of us to learn how to do math was to pit each other against each other. Everybody had to stand in front of the room. You had to answer math questions. And if you got it right, you stayed up there. And the next person came up. And I didn't lose for 2 years.
Holy shit.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
I made sure that I won 60 straight games of that shit. And it's because I didn't want to lose. I was competitive and it was something that I knew. And if I knew it and I liked it and I was good at it and I was competitive, why the hell would I want to fall from that? Okay, and in that same capacity, if there's anything that I maybe am not at the top at that I think I maybe could be, I don't like that either.
So obviously we can tell you're a big Star Wars fan, but is there any other franchises or any other movies that you absolutely love? Probably not as much, but pretty damn close.
I wouldn't say anything pretty damn close, but Back to the Future is easily my biggest other favorite movie source. Nice. And nice. Little flux capacitor in there.
Flux capacitor in there, and the wheels hover.
Oh, well, we're going. We don't need roads.
Exactly.
Perfect.
One of the best 4K transfers I've ever seen.
Sorry?
It's probably one of the best 4K transfers of an older movie I've seen.
It's beautiful. It's easily my brother's favorite movie. He actually can quote the entire movie. It's crazy. And so that's one that I've just watched so many times because of that. And I adore, not specifically the movie saga of anything. I've always been a Batman fan, though, the character. And other than that, a big TV guy. Much bigger in TV than movies in general.
You and Daniel have a lot in common then.
Yeah, so I loved Lost. I was a huge fan of Lost.
You hear that, Dave? He loves Lost. That's Dave, one of our co-hosts. That's one of his favorite shows of all time.
It was a phenomenal show, and that's one show where they went in without a plan, which doesn't usually work, and most people didn't think it worked, but I actually do think it worked. I quite liked Lost all the way through. I think it's a much better show to binge as well.
Yeah, whenever people start talking Lost, I get lost.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, and I was more of a different show worlds that I would fall in love with. But I think that also might be why I am so deeply, deeply in love with The Mandalorian. I love Din, love Grogu, and everything that entire new element to the galaxy has brought us.
Dave is watching Lost right now. How fortuitous.
Nice.
Yeah, wow. It's a show that every once in a while somebody will bring it up, and Dave you'll see his light, he'll gush.
Yeah,
Ken Lung, come on. Ace and Ken got that one wrong. That was a match that had a bunch of wrong answers that I knew. There's one.
Sorry, which match?
Ken versus Ace.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting match.
Yeah, they weren't the kind of questions that the schmoedown was used to asking. And that happened to Ace as well in Spectacular. And so that's a little bit, and it can kind of show some like the difference in players. And that shows why someone like, I love you, Ben Bateman, but the 60 days thing is bloody stupid. It's outrageous because it shows you that Bob Anderson is not listed as Darth Vader on IMDb.
No.
Bob Anderson is, I don't think listed. I think he's just listed as like Lieutenant 1 or something.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know specifically, and he knows it through Lord of the Rings, which is even crazier. But like the Bob Anderson question and the Bomar Monk question, those are two unbelievably deep cuts that I didn't get. I'll fully admit that I didn't get either of those ones. But those are the kind of cuts that really mean you need to be able to get the deep side of things, and even things like the one that knocked Ace out, which I did have, the decraniated. And so that was one that if you go through like the reference books for those things, you watch Solo. Do you think you're going to be able to remember every species in that movie if you're not watching that movie constantly, or you're not familiarize yourself with being able to discern that's a new species? I need to look that up because I can be able to discern, oh no, I know that because they've been this here before. But it's where it makes it harder to study in a short amount of time. Not that I don't think Ace is a phenomenal player. I just mean that somebody like Alex, who is breathing Star Wars in like a gas, it's like it's air for him. That makes you in a different kind of position. So it's an interesting spot to be in for all of us who are going up against someone like him. But it makes it more interesting and makes me excited to be maybe the one to do it.
Yeah, go ask your question. I do want to come back to something you just said in that.
To play devil's advocate for a second, I do think like obviously you can't do it from any like regular singles competitor. But I think like an IG focused or just somebody who already loves Star Wars enough, like I agree. A 60-day sit down with the visual dictionaries and watching all the movies, I think that preps you for a tournament.
I do agree with that. If you are somebody who you have a really good base level, but the best thing, like for example, with an example of Ben Bateman again, the only thing he got was that Chewbacca was a Wookiee when he was asked 3 questions. I don't remember what some of the other ones were, but it was just like, that was his base level of knowledge, that Chewbacca is a Wookiee. And that took him a few seconds. And so I agree that an IG player, 60 days of intense studying could absolutely hang.
And I do think like just somebody who is just a fan of Star Wars, like I definitely couldn't, because I'm not a huge fan of all of the movies and definitely would not watch all of them 1,000 times. But I do think like that sort of work for 60 days, like the freshness in your brain, you would be able to, I think the only time you could do it is a tournament. If they give you a break between any of those matches, you're losing all of it. But I think 60 days is long enough to cram a ton of knowledge into your head.
It's interesting because I also, there are certain things where I'll notice, like, I'll be really angry at myself because I'll remember that there's something I know that I did know, but I can't remember anymore. And then it shows you, okay, well, what are the weird things that are sticking with me and why aren't they sticking with me? And so then it comes down to, okay, now I need to reevaluate the way I've been studying certain things. Recently, I went back. There was something that I could not get. I'm not going to mention what it is. I'm not going to mention what it is. There's something that it's a pool of 5-point potential. That's all I'll say. And I also know that 2 other Star Wars players are studying this right now. So you probably all can figure out who those are. And then ultimately figure that out from there. But that also just shows you that I'm studying my competitors and I know what they're studying as well.
Speaking of your competitors, you did say something earlier, like in the Ken and Ace match, and then also in the Spectacular match, you said there was questions asked that you hadn't seen the schmoedown. What did you mean by that? Oh,
in the same way that I was kind of just getting at a little bit here, is that you really need to look at the way every question is asked. And so if let's go. Well, I don't know if I want to give that strategy away too much.
Well, no, but I mean, like, just
just kind of playing around it. If you can get in the mind of the writer as best as possible, then you can figure out how that they're reading these books too. And you can figure out the right things to study down. And you can figure out what is going to be counted and what isn't. And Andrew DiMolante is a victim of this. I was listening to him earlier talking about it, and the fact that he had studied things that he has gotten wrong since because he crossed them off his list, or that he's noticed other people's gotten wrong and was shocked and was thrilled that he didn't get those questions because it was on his list at one point, but he pared it down. And I would agree with him on that. Bomar Monk would probably never have made my list until recently. That is a really specific way of asking a question about something that is in the background and is not the droid. And specifically, he knew it was a BT-16 because that was what he knew to study. He didn't know to study that it was a Bomar Monk's brain inside the BT-16. And that's a really reasonable thing to not study. And I am very impressed that Alex didn't do that one. The Bob Anderson one, I can see how someone could maybe know that one, and I even actually I heard Joseph Scrimshaw and Ken Knapsack talking about it on a different podcast after. And so that's another amazing one that at a different time and place, I would have actually known that one at that point in time had I listened to the other podcast prior to. So it's a perfect storm, but that's what you have to be prepared for. And knowing what they're broadening now I'm broadening in different categories. So not just, okay, they're broadening, okay, now they'll consider the Bomar Monk brain. Now I'm taking that lens of, okay, let's explode even the most finite categories in Star Wars. And let's see how ridiculously finite that the questions can be, because that's what the 5-pointers are going to be. The 5-pointers are going to be outrageous next year. The 3-pointers are going to be 5-pointers. And I imagine the 5-pointers are going to blow people's minds. I'm expecting the 5-pointers to be so effing hard because they have to be.
I was gonna say I don't think there's any part of my mind left after all the questions this year, because I could hang a little bit. Like for full disclosure, I actually knew the Bob Anderson one. That's only because I had actually heard it in passing, and I know Bob Anderson was a choreographer for a long time of some of the most famous sword fights in film history. So that's how I knew that one. It wasn't because I studied it.
The Bob Anderson one annoyed me so much because I have a level of knowledge that's high enough to know that 3 people played Darth Vader. I can only tell you who one of them is. It was one's the body, one's the voice, and one's the breathing, and it's.
And you could add into it with Hayden Christensen playing it. And...
Okay, but he doesn't play Darth Vader.
Yeah, he does. He was in the
Revenge of the Sith. He will be again.
He asked for Lucas to be in the suit.
Yeah, and then Spencer for Rogue One. It doesn't really matter because there's also 19 years. And so my guess is, I really hope this happens, that in Kenobi, he cuts his legs off, specifically giving Kenobi the high ground one more time. And then Vader gets the leg implants so that he's 6'7" after. So my guess is Vader's going to be like 6'2", 3". And then he's going to get his legs cut off, and Kenobi's going to take the high ground from. So that way, when Vader comes back, he's just got the perpetual high ground of being 6'7".
So it's just petty. It's so he can.
Vader's petty. he's a petty, sour cyborg.
He's a whiny little bitch.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is, but he's all of our favorite whiny little bitch.
The robot, he was a whiny little bitch, but...
Well, and that's the thing. I adore Anakin and Vader, second favorite character behind the ancient little green man Yoda, but I think that it's a pathetic character, but it's a tragic character, and those are some of the most interesting.
Yeah, it's one of the better tragic characters of all time. Okay, so one of the things we've been getting the rookies we've been talking to do is just to cut a little bit of a promo. It could be whatever you want. You could call out a future fellow rookie, competitor, whatever. Basically, it's just so you can sell yourself to the audience who haven't seen your promo and potential managers that are going to be watching this. So we're just going to have you on screen by yourself, and then, just cut whatever promo.
Okay, so all right, you kind of told me to do a promo against another rookie, so I think I kind of prepared something with that.
Good.
But
okay, go ahead.
All right, I'm coming into this as a simple man, just trying to make his way in the schmoedown galaxy. I have 7 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and I don't care. Eric Whiteley, you have 600,000. You get to make a living of talking about what you love. In a space like this, that impresses me greatly. It really, really does. But I love the galaxy far, far away, and I love the schmoedown, and I love trivia, and I worked my ass off to get into this draft. You did your job. You'll maybe end up winning one day, but it'll be like Jeff Snyder. Just one of those, finally, he got the win. I don't trust anyone who has Attack of the Clones as their favorite Star Wars movie and then doesn't know the year it came out in. Also, you might mispronounce more things than Bill Burr does. Anyway, you want to enter the cold abyss of Star Wars space? I'm from Canada. I was raised in the cold. Welcome. That work?
Oh, fucking A. I'm not gonna lie. When you said you're a simple man, I almost started singing "Simple Man" by Leonard Skinner. Okay, Daniel, who do you think should draft him? I'm thinking the usual suspects. I think he'd fit in well with
suspects. Is a pretty interesting spot.
Yeah.
They've been building an interesting group of the elite knowledge base at the moment with Liz and Drew and Ethan. I mean, that's a powerhouse group. I will absolutely play for any faction, though. I think they all have a lot to offer, whether it's the players, the managers themselves, the different approaches that they're taking.
I don't know. It's something about the idea of you and Sam working together. It works. It fits.
I definitely like his eagerness to pull out the challenge. I've got no problem with it's got to be legit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of petty challenges, but I am definitely a fan of strategic challenges.
What about you, Daniel? Who do you think he would fit in well with?
Well, I'm assuming the Rockstars is off the table because you seem to be. You seem to be aiming at Damon, and I don't want to turn this, or I should say the stars. That's completely my bad. And we don't want to turn the stars into the exchange.
No, so I do want to say this on that notion.
The Rockstars, yeah.
Every team should be having at least 2 Star Wars players. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, if you've got somebody who can play in a couple divisions, I mean, hell, there's someone like Adam Witt. If he goes back to the dungeon can afford to have 3 Star Wars players for all that they care, especially with the way that their draft position is and the fact that they'll likely pick up Dee Malanta as or Kelly or someone right away out of the get-go. But I think that every faction should have a couple. And yes, I'm gunning for Damon. But if I wasn't gunning for Damon, why the hell am I here?
Yeah.
He is the Emperor. Emperor Alex Damon is the only way to bring balance back to this division. And that's what you have to do. That's the hero's journey. And so that's my intention. I actually am a massive fan of Alex Damon. I listen to his channel. Him and Molly do great work. And I think that they bring a lot to the schmoedown. But just because I'm a big fan of his work doesn't mean I don't want to beat the pants off him.
Yeah, I mean, even if the champion is on your team, you should still be wanting to go for the title. That
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I respect, and even though I threw jabs at a lot of people in my promos, because you have to, and you have to be able to show where that you believe you belong, and I do believe I belong. But with that said, I do have a lot of respect for anybody who's putting themselves out here. I have a ton of respect for anybody who's currently played in the league. It's a lot of pressure, and anyone who's currently played in the league has provided a ton of enjoyment for me as a fan. And so I have to thank them for that as a starting point. And so it's great to just be in the conversation, to be on the draft boards with a lot of these other people who I've watched play. And so I think that's certainly pretty cool too.
Daniel, you want to take the final question?
Yeah, the last question before we let you get out of here is, like, let's say Emperor Damon is coming to take away all of the movies from the galaxy, and you have basically a week and a half to prepare for him before he gets here. What 3 movies are you watching before they're all gone?
But there is one thing, we have been letting people pick Star Wars as one.
Thank God.
Yeah.
That one. That's how I'm going to start out Star Wars. Back to the Future. If I can only pick one, I'll pick the first. although I do love the entire trilogy.
Ditto.
And it would be extremely melancholy, but I would probably have to pick Shawshank Redemption. It's too bloody good.
I don't think that's one we've heard yet, actually.
I think I would do that one in the middle. Like, watch the trilogy, then Shawshank, and then end with Back to the Future, just because it's a fun send-off.
Yeah, I completely agree with your order there. Shawshank is one of my 5 favorite movies, though. I adore that movie. I think it, aside from franchises, in which case like A New Hope or Empire, because it's the greatest sequel ever. I mean, you can make arguments that those are the most perfect movies ever. But I think if you throw all those things aside, I think it's pretty hard to say anything but perfect things about Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, for greatest sequels, it's Empire and it's Godfather 2. Like, those are the greatest sequels of all time.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, sir.
Okay, well, that brings us an end to this episode, man. This has been great. This has actually been our longest rookie one, and I got to admit, I had fun.
Nice.
The conversation that's what I love. It's great.
Yeah, it's been absolutely a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I mean, it was kind of last minute because I only got my audition in the last week they were out. And so I just was posted on the draft board this past weekend, but I want the managers to get to know me, and I'm happy to get to know them a little bit more. It's great to get to know kind of some of the other schmoedown kind of personalities in the commentary space as well. So thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it's always fun to have a fellow Canadian, and we'll definitely be doing our best to push to get this seen by as many managers as possible. Appreciate it,
guys.
For sure. Yeah. And where can people find you if they're looking for you? You do a Star Wars show.
Yeah, the best thing to do would just be wherever you find podcasts, except for Spotify, but we're going to be changing that because we realized we're not on Spotify for some reason. And so just Recorder 66 podcast. We do a breakdown of Star Wars into 20-minute chunks or into specific topics.
I just got it. Recorder 66.
Yeah. And so, we break things down into different chunks, and then we do our 6 and 6s. And so we do top 6 and top 6 topics. And that way, that's what we're going to be doing mostly this year because, we've gone through all the films and there's no Mando, and there's not going to be too many TV shows this year. But boy, we'll have a ton for 2022. Won't that be fun? And also, I'm excited if schmoedown adds the extra categories for next year, because I have no problem adding those to my list.
You're gonna have to add those categories in.
Yeah, I think there might be some pushback from some other players, but if I'm fortunate enough to be drafted, then I think every Star Wars player gets a vote, and it would get my vote. So,
do you have an Instagram or Twitter too that you'd like to plug, or is this a show?
No, I'm not much of a social media guy. I just love Star Wars, and I love following along. But no, I certainly I love talking about Star Wars. So follow along with my podcast, Recorder 66. And follow along with the schmoedown.
Right on. Daniel, what about you? Where could everybody find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at avengers_SOTN. That's Schmoes of the North. You can find our Facebook page, Schmoes of the North, where we run some discussion posts and fantasy league for the schmoedown, where everybody gets to draft their own factions and play along with the points and everything. And also, I'll be starting a podcast on this YouTube channel starting February 18th, the Best TV Show podcast, where I'm going to be sitting down with a guest and talking about their favorite TV show for about an hour, talking like characters, themes, and then the second half will be like a deep dive discussion into a specific season of the show and how we're going to go beat for beat through the season, talk about the story, how it affected the characters and the overall plot. And that'll be February 18th. We're going to be starting with Game of Thrones, one of my favorite TV series and my guest's favorite. So I cannot wait to drop that. And that can be found at the BTVS pod on Twitter.
And I know I said Parks and Rec earlier, but dude, I want to talk about How I Met Your Mother on that. That is my favorite show. So And yeah, you can find me at soda_the_saxman on Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on this channel doing pretty much everything that Daniel has already said. You can also find me on my other YouTube channel, Media Sweaties Network, where we've just got a podcast where pretty much we just sit down and we just talk about all our favorite things throughout the week. So definitely check us out over there. Thank you very much, Ross, for reaching out to us first and for being on. Like, this was a blast.
Oh, no. Thanks again.
Yeah.
I should mention, just everybody, please like and subscribe if you're watching this and you're not already, and definitely join us. We're here all of the time, posting, talking about the schmoedown, both reactions and interviews as often as possible. So come join the fun.
Exactly. So yeah, thank you very much, those of us for watching, including you, Dave and Lou. And we will definitely see you guys all next time on Northern Consultations. So have a good evening, everybody.